Braveheart. Who can forget that scene? Great destriers charging. William Wallace exhorting his men, facing that charge, waiting, holding, and then crash. Of course, none of that actually happened. Because here at Stirling Bridge, it was the Scots who charged down from the hills to the north to the English crossing the bridge. But imagine if a band of fearless Scots did make that stand. And imagine if the men who stood in that line weren't just faceless men of legend, but real life individuals where we know their position in the line, what happened to the survivors, and the names of their wives and children. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. And if you enjoyed this video, then give it a thumbs up, share it, and watch the next one. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. To introduce you to some real Bravehearts, I'm going to take you up the hill from Stirling Bridge to Stirling Castle and the museum of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Because in one of the rooms in this museum, there's a picture of that glorious stand. It's a painting of the famed thin red line at the Battle of Balaclava during the Crimean War, a time when Scotsmen did stand in two ranks facing a charge of cavalry, where their leader on the horse in the background did call on them to hold until just the right moment, where they did rout a cavalry charge and change the course of warfare. Not only can I tell you the name and the story of that courageous leader behind the troops, I can tell you the stories of some extraordinary men who stood in that line. But I'm going to limit it to 4. This is Charles Ellingworth. We know that this was his position in the line. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't the face of Charles Ellingworth. The painter wasn't at the battle, standing hurriedly sketching away as the Russian cavalry charged. That would be mental. But we do know that all the faces painted in this picture were veterans. The Edinburgh-based painter Robert Gibb used as models Edinburgh military veterans of the time, which gives this painting a unique authenticity. Now, in spite of the fact that we know less about him than some of the others, Charles Ellingworth is probably the best known soldier in this painting. You see, not only do we know that Charles Ellingworth is the right-hand man in the rear rank, we also know that he was born in 1833. Although I don't know where. He's described later in life as a Highlander, but his name isn't Highland. It's not even Scottish. It's a very English name. Indeed, having been part of this famous stand in Balaclava and serving in India, he served in Canada for years as a sergeant in the Queen's Own Canadian Rifles. But it was to London that he returned to settle and live out his final days. When the London branch of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Regimental Association was formed in 1923, he became a member. And it's this last piece of information that gives us a clue to his significance. A man born in 1833 joining an organisation in 1923 meant that he was 90 years old. He'd lived through the entire Victorian era, which was more than Queen Victoria did. When he died at the age of 94, he was the final survivor of the men in this painting, the last man standing. Buried with military honours in the Soldiers' Corner of the Brompton Road Cemetery on Friday, the 14th of January, 1927. with Pipe Major Brian Smith and former Drum Major David Legg playing at the graveside. Private William Dugat didn't last quite as long as the nonagenarian Ellingworth. He died at 72 in 1890. Reports at that time said that he was one of the few of these guys left. His dad had been a shoemaker before he joined up with the 93rd. He was wounded several times during the Crimean campaign. Even the guys who survived were taking a hell of a toll on their bodies. Like most of these guys, after Crimea, he was stationed at Dover for a brief spell before being shipped off to some conflict in China. It was as they were passing the southern African Cape en route that they were diverted to deal with what's been historically known as the Indian Mutiny. 7 years later, back in the UK, Dugat signed up with the 109th Regiment Bombay Infantry. And he did another 10 years service in places like Cork, Bombay, Aden, Pune, Multan and Delhi. When it was time to come back to Aberdeen, he married his cousin. Now this is a serious video. There's going to be no mention of sheep or people from Fife. I will make mention of the fact that he went back to being a cobbler who enjoyed good health until he didn't. He was buried in Nellfield Cemetery, attended by a contingent of the Gordon Highlanders. His commanding officer during his years in the 109th was a guy called General Sir Alexander Reid, Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. Apparently, every time Sir Alexander Reid was in Aberdeen, he'd visit with Private Dugat, the cobbler. Is that a measure of the stature of this man who never rose above the rank of private? Or the paternalism of a senior officer? Or camaraderie of service? I can only imagine what went through the minds of the men painted here whenever or wherever they met in the future, in military or in civilian life. It must have been something to look in another man's eyes as he looked into yours, just knowing you were one of those that remained from the tiny group of men in the world who stood in that line. Now, I said 4 guys, but as a wee bonus, Sergeant James Cobb had enlisted in June 1841 and served with the regiment in Toronto, Montreal and Quebec before Crimea. A smashed thigh bone meant that he was invalided home and was one of the wounded visited by Queen Victoria. Apparently, the handkerchief that she gave him was his most treasured possession to the end of his days. Now, this is one of my more serious videos, but if you didn't know, I'm also a stand-up comic. Now, some of you will know that at the time of filming, I'm touring a stand-up comedy show, Scotland Made the World. There are lots of dates to come in 2026 with shows in Scotland and across Canada, and one in London. Click the link top right or in the description below for dates and tickets, or go to www.brucefummey.co.uk. Lieutenant Colonel John Joyner didn't start as an officer. He enlisted as a private from Lawn May near Fraserburgh. After a couple of years on the home front at Fort George and Aberdeen, he headed off for a 6-year stint in Canada as well. Toronto, Kingston, Montreal, Quebec. Some of the places that I'll be doing my stand-up show in 2026. I'll see you there. It seems he was a popular non-commissioned officer, and he was nicknamed Honest John. Now, it's not because of the frostbite that he suffered in Canadian winters that we know him today. It's the outbreak of the Crimean War that led him to stand with his comrades in that line, and to later assert the following description. The great body of Russian cavalry charged the 93rd at outset, And although the 93rd were deserted by the Turks, they still stood firm. Sir Colin Campbell rode behind the line and said, "Steady, 93rd, for if necessary, every man of you will die where he stands." The universal and cheery cry, "Aye, Sir Colin, we will do that," must have told the chief that he might place every confidence in that regiment. It was a noble sight, that thin red line of Highlanders standing shoulder to shoulder, prominent because there were no supports near them. And it was seen that there was a little unsteadiness in the enemy's ranks. Then burst forth from the line a cheer, and the men stepped forward as if they would meet the enemy with bayonet. The enemy swerved to the left as if to get behind the 93rd, but the Grenadiers poured a volley round by their left, and they rode off the field, followed by a wild cheer from the 93rd. From that day, it's been spoken of as the Thin Red Line. As the name suggests, Joyner joined in all the hardships and difficulties of that 2.5 years. Alma, Balaclava, Kerch, and Sebastopol, surviving wounding from a nearby bursting shell. Then off to the conflict, then called the Indian Mutiny. He was with his comrades when they went through the forced marches, harsh conditions, and untold atrocities on both sides of that campaign. Like you and I, each man in that line carries demerits as well as merits at the end of life's reckoning. By March 1860, he was back with his regiment in Aberdeen. No doubt a desk job and a bit of promotion had been earned, and he was now a paymaster. And that was his role when he retired in 1886. After more than 40 years, the private was now Lieutenant Colonel Joyner. He married the eldest daughter of an Aberdeen wool merchant, but she predeceased him. For his last 20 years, he lived in cults, and they say took a keen interest in welfare in the district. He was chairman of the parochial board. I'm told of his personal generosity that his purse was often used freely to deserving objects. It's not like a man in that area to stand his hand in a pimp. When he died, the newspaper said that he had been in failing health for a while. On his regular walks around town, folk could see that the constitution that triumphantly carried him through many a hero's journey and hard-won battle was rapidly giving way. To the end, he was one of those men who could look in each other's eyes and know. But this picture also lets us into the lives of women. That's right, sisters, I didn't forget about you just because it's a blokey bloke military thing. You see, in this line is Colour Sergeant James Hutton. When he passed away, blind, at the age of 77 in Glasgow, he must have looked back on the day that he stood in that line above the port of Balaclava. But he must also have thought of the women who shared his life, with whom he fathered and shared children. Mary Bottomley was an army wife. Now, a Victorian army wife's a special kind of person, living in challenging conditions with her man at camp, moving at somebody else's whim, long periods with husbands away, living with the precarious uncertainty that he might not return. I told you that after the horrors of Crimea, these guys went on to what's called the Indian Mutiny. Now, if you're from India, you've probably got a slightly different name and view of it. It was the new pattern 1853 Enfield rifle, first fired in anger by these men of the 93rd at Balaclava, that meant the men of that thin red line could fire with the accuracy to resist charging Russian cavalry. Ironically, when that very type of rifled musket was issued to Sepoy Indian troops 3 years later, rumours spread. The paper cartridges that you had to bite before sliding the gunpowder and the bullet down the barrel contained beef fat, offensive to Hindus, and pork fat, offensive to Muslims. That was the spark to the tinderbox that started the bloodbath. So the rifles that saved the 93rd at Balaclava were the very spark that brought them to that horrific clash in India. Funny how things turn out. It was a brutal series of events with horrific atrocities on both sides, as I've said. No good or bad people, just people doing good and bad things. When the action of the Indian mutiny settled down, Mary joined her husband in India. 20 shillings was given to wives going to India to help them with clothing and comforts for the sea voyage. Imagine the discomfort 4 years later when her husband and baby daughter died in the same year. No husband and a long way from home. That doesn't give you many choices. Or does it? It wasn't unusual for widows, maybe with little income and children to feed, to take another soldier as a husband. Widows were often approached by other soldiers, sometimes a friend of the deceased, out of a sense of compassion for the widow's situation. They felt duty-bound to marry and look after the widow. Now, it might not all be compassion. As I say, it took a certain strength of character to cope with the hardships of a 19th century soldier's wife. Where would a single man find a woman like that stationed abroad? Mary was probably quite a catch. At least one soldier was known to ask a widow to marry him during the actual ceremony of the recently deceased husband. Of course, she said that it wasn't a good time for him to ask such a question, because one of his comrades had already asked and she'd agreed. The guy was just much too late. Mary married Colour Sergeant James Hutton of the Thin Red Line in November 1864. They had 3 sons in India. James left the army in 1868 and Mary gave birth again a year later, but died in 1871. Hutton remarried and had a further 5 sons with his new wife. It may not be obvious to the naked eye, but you should be able to make out a 77-year-old blind guy born in Argyllshire standing in that picture. The husband, the 2 wives, and father of 9 children is known as Colour Sergeant James Hutton. I just call him Shagger. James Hutton wasn't promoted to Colour Sergeant until he was in India. I don't know the name of the men who proudly held the colours aloft at Balaclava. Men in their prime, represented in this picture, who have now passed. What I haven't mentioned is the regimental colours the Colour Sergeant had the duty to protect. Time's taken its toll on them, just like the men. Battered and torn, either side of this picture, are the remains of the colours carried in that painting. It's the people here at the Argyll and Sutherland Highlander Museum who hold these colours, the memories of the men that I've mentioned and others that I haven't had time to. It's easy to think of museums as cold stores of information, showing off interesting trinkets. Here, when you know just a little about the stories behind these artefacts, it brings them to life so that you feel that you can almost touch the men and events. So when you come to Stirling Castle, don't forget to experience the history of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. This painting has more stories to tell, and I've made videos about some of them, and there's one of them coming up on screen now. If you enjoyed this video, then like it, share it, and watch the next one. Support the channel by clicking top right to become a Patreon member or buy me a coffee in the description below. In the meantime, ha mynd ochus gwn fi lam alai. Chere and drasta.